right, here we go again. It's Tuesday already, Dan. Did you know it's Tuesday already?
Yeah, it went by quick, and
Did.
I'm over here laughing because on that intro, like you have a picture of yourself, you got like this mocking, like condescending look on your
Well,
face.
the shoe fits wear it. I might as well have that, right?
Well, it's like your whole YouTube experience in one photo. It's kind of
There is no photo that will ever sum up my YouTube experience. That kind of photo doesn't exist. It's a
no, well,
combination of rage, anger. Yeah, it's so many things. There's no such thing that's a photo of that. So,
yeah, well,
all right. So, what are we going to talk about today? Dan, I'm going to let you tell the people, the one person watching right now, what we're going to talk about today, because this is your idea. So, you get
well,
to
if we
talk
can't make
about it.
fun of ourselves, then what do we really have?
Right, right.
There's always views later on. You're too hard on yourself. But,
Actually, you're right because like last week, I didn't think we were going to get very money and had like 65.
Just let God send who He wants, man. And
Yeah, that's
that's
fine.
it.
It's fine.
You,
So
it can't help anybody if we don't do it.
that's true.
Besides, it's actually fun to do anyway. So
It is. It is fun. Well, that's the whole point.
you can't worry about the audience, man.
Nah, nah, nah.
Uh,
What are we going to talk about this week?
so it's a broad subject, but I think it gets very convoluted within society. Well, let me rephrase that. I know it gets very convoluted in society and really twisted, but it's just the idea of purpose.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I don't think it's that overly complex. I think society's made it complex. I think most people are confused on what their quote purpose is, but I think it's actually much simpler than we try to make it out to be because we want to look at the worldly purpose, which would be like gaining things, gaining material things, money, this, that, a job, promotion, whatever.
Yep.
But I think that can be a sliver of it. But if it's a pie, it's a very slim sliver. So,
Right. I think there's different categories of purpose throughout your life. You have a purpose for, like you said, the worldly things. You want a purpose for your job, right? You want the ultimate is obviously God's purpose. What is God's purpose for you? A lot of
right.
people struggle with that. There's purpose when it comes to, who you want to be as a person. There's purpose to how you want to be as a father, as a mother, whatever that might be. There's like all of these different types. So, which one do you want to tackle first?
Well, I think that's what's so interesting is it's all a grand plan, and so all the different areas of purpose you're referring to actually all go hand in hand, and it's all you need one to get to the next. God uses all of them.
Mm-hmm.
So hypothetically, okay, say your purpose was here's a hypothetical. So someone's purpose is like, oh, I want to um, get good grades in school, and then I want to go to this college. I want to have this major so I can get this job doing whatever it may be. So say you do all those things, and then you get the job, and then that's where you meet your wife, and then then you have kids. So it's like it's all connected. You need all of it. You needed to get the good grades. You needed to have the right teachers at the right time in the right place to help. You needed the right help. You needed the right classmates. You needed to go to that certain school at that certain time with those certain people.
Mm-hmm.
You see where I'm going here?
Yeah, yeah,
It's all your whole life is purpose
right.
because there can be small things that are purpose that lead into the big purpose, like meeting a wife, for example, to have kids, like having a spouse and children. The purpose, say, that you have there is massive compared to the stepping stones of purpose that God put there for you to get to that, if
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
You see how that works? So it's like it's like I wrote down here in Proverbs 19:21. It says, "Many are the plans in a person's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." So you kind of touched it earlier. It's God's purpose for us. We can make our plans, but it also said He'll lead our steps. But it's His purpose is our purpose. We just have to
Yeah.
be right in understanding with God and seek Him out to know what that is. It's not just, oh, I need to do this thing or that thing, but it obedience in God really is the ultimate purpose,
Right.
because then that's what he uses to lead you and guide you.
Well,
So
and that's good what you said, because I think a lot of the reason people struggle with purpose is because they have their own idea of what their purpose needs to be, which is completely different than what God's purposes has for them.
right,
So there's almost like you know one of these going on, because
right.
the person is going to be pretty stubborn and persistent on what they want, and obviously God is also going to be stubborn and persistent on what He wants for you. So
But he'll
I
still
think
let you
that's
do whatever it
he
is you
will. Well,
want him
that's
to.
and that's the thing about free will. You have the free will to do that.
Yeah.
Now, is that to say that later on down the road you won't realize, oh, I should have done it God's way? Yeah, that'll probably happen, because usually that's the case. But what you said earlier too is another part that's interesting. It's like society has created this idea of purpose where it's like, okay, your purpose is to have the fanciest car, the fanciest house, the most beautiful husband or wife, this and that. And it's like, that's not really, I tell me if you think this is right or wrong. I think there's people get goals mixed up with purpose.
You said it. That's it. And then if they don't achieve those goals, which they get mixed up with purpose, then they deem themselves, say, a failure,
Right.
or
Right.
they think that society thinks they're a failure, and then they think they're a loser, or they think that they don't matter on down the line. You can breathe in insecurity and
Right.
self-deprecation, all these things. But it's one of the greatest lies, is that those things you're talking about equates to your purpose and success. Well, no, because like
Yep.
you just said too, you can do all the wrong things, but God can still get you back to the original purpose of your life. It just so happens you took the really, really scenic route to get
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But God will let you do that. Um, and so, but think of it this way: like purpose runs to, and this is my view, it runs so deep that even after you're dead, your purpose is still kind of going on this earth. Because I'll give you an example. Like, we always talk about like something, say, that Grandma Picorni did, right?
Mhm.
Like, or something that Grandpa Picorni or Grandma Henry or Grandpa Henry, and we remember what they said, and like, and all the people they knew and the people they helped. Well, those things that they did, part of their purpose when they were living, still affects people that are still living now, even though they're not.
Right.
So their purpose that they achieved on this earth with God's help still continues to affect people that are still here,
Right.
whether it be advice, whether it be, um, you know, someone they helped or whatever. It's still affecting people, even though they're
Mhm.
gone.
Mhm.
And it just, purpose is such a deep thing, well beyond the material. It's really, I think it's just an extremely fascinating thing, because it's like, it's hard to almost define because it's so huge.
Yeah.
Um, because whether we think so or not, by even us doing this podcast, like, it's part of our purpose,
Sure.
because God's using it for, whether it just be for us, mom and dad, whoever's watching, whatever, it's getting to someone for something. And that's part of your purpose too. Like, and you can put that on everything. Our
Yeah.
purpose generally,
Yeah.
like for example, when you have a talent, those talents aren't supposed to really be used to appease ourselves. So if I have a talent, I'm not supposed to use that for myself. I'm supposed to give, God gives me that talent, then I'm supposed to share it with others in turn, and then that's essentially giving it back to God. It's supposed to be a cycle and come full circle. I'm supposed to share that with people. That's part of my purpose. He can work through that talent through me to benefit somebody else. That's
Mhm.
part of your purpose too. Like, you see how deep it can go.
Yeah, no, I mean, so like I'll use myself as an example. I always kind of thought that I've always liked to kind of entertain people, whether it be at the haunt or whether it be YouTube or whatever it was. And I think so. I have a point. Let me get to it. I think the problem that you can run into, like with purpose, because I felt for myself that was my purpose for a long time. In one aspect of my life was to entertain people. What would you say to somebody that lets others kind of derail their purpose, whether it be because of criticism or because they think that, they're not doing a good job, or they just plain old don't like them. What would you say to somebody like that who's got a purpose in mind and they're doing it, but then they decide, oh, maybe it's not my person because of what somebody says.
Well, that's from a biblical standpoint, from a Christian standpoint, that's very simple in the context of, am I living to please man, or am I,
Right. Yeah.
because if I am, then I'm no longer living to please God. So in
Yeah.
other words, you don't need someone's approval. You don't need
Right.
people's approval.
All right.
So if someone doesn't want to encourage, say, if you believe in your heart of hearts that it's your purpose to go to this college, for example, whatever college, and you have people just coming in and trying to derail that, often out of envy or jealousy or just whatever the bad reasoning may be. Sometimes
Yeah.
you know,
Because there's a
what?
lot of people that are going to stand in the way of what you deem is your purpose,
Of course.
and you
Well,
got to knock that down. Yeah.
well, and yeah, exactly. Because what happens there is my purpose isn't your purpose, but we still each have a part in each other's purpose, right? So
Yeah.
just because this person went to this school and did this certain thing and was raised this way doesn't mean that their child, that exact things are going to work for their child, right? So like, oh, you
Right.
need to go to this school, you need to be in this job, you need to say this thing, you need to do that thing, you need to dress this way, you need to do this. That worked for somebody here, that's great, but it may not work for this person too. You
Right.
can't, it's not a blanket statement where, because God makes each person in his image, yes, but he doesn't, but no two people are the exact same.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you and I, we can have a whole bunch of things we agree on, we're related, we're brothers, but it doesn't mean that everything you do is everything that I would do, or everything that you're supposed to do is everything that I'm supposed to do, et cetera, et cetera. So I think people make that mistake too, where, oh, well, this guy and that guy said that wasn't a good idea for me. But it's like, well, but what did God say about it?
Right. Well, so we could take you as an example too. You've done haunts and masks for 20 years,
Hmm.
and you've succeeded, you've failed, right? You've done both. Okay. What is it that keeps driving you? Because I know you're still doing it because you post on Facebook, you are, and you keep putting pictures on. What keeps you doing it for 20 years and still doing it even when you've had hard times and bad times? Do you feel that your mass and you working at a haunt, obviously the haunt is because of you've told us stories about that before, but with the mass shop, do you feel that that's a purpose in life, or do you feel like it's more just a hobby and you like doing it?
Well, that's a really actually it's a really great question. Actually, you'd be yeah, good. That's
I
good.
made you think.
No, which I love actually. No, that the reason that yeah, I like that because it's a tremendous example of where we can think that something is our purpose,
Hmm.
and it
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
but not for the reason we think it is, and not it's it's a fork in the road that ends up going to the same place, but we went the scenic route as opposed to just the straight route. Where I thought my purpose for having the talent of being able to sculpt and make props and masks and things like that was so I could maybe have a career off that. I could
Yeah.
put out my talents. I can show everybody. But the original idea and purpose for me was all self-rooted.
Sure.
And that's the problem immediately. And or a business or a means of income. And Ray and I tried that with our old shop. I've tried that with my new shop, and it's never come to fruition. And so in the last few years, I've learned, yes, you're meant to have that talent, but you're supposed to use it to share and give to others. And when you're doing that, that means you're meeting other people. And then you're getting to know them, you're talking to them, and there's plenty of them I've shared the gospel with. I've helped them in some capacity, or they've helped me. It was just the talent that got you to that.
Hmm.
The reason is to expand the kingdom of God, and God will use that talent He gives you to do so. It's not to just better only you. Yeah, that can be part of it, but that's where I had to learn. People have come up to me countless times when I was a vendor making my stuff about how my stuff reminded them of their childhood, and it gave them this wonderful memory, and they got to relive some good times in their own head. because of something I made. Or, I mean, they're literally like giddy over it, like these things.
Yeah.
And I don't say that to brag. That's not me, but just something like that is just like, and also I've sat there talking to people for like a half an hour before, and they're just all excited about how a prop I made reminds them of their childhood, or they couldn't find something to buy that looked like it, or whatever. And it's just like, or it inspired them to try the talent,
Hmm.
or I give them a business card, and on the back of my business cards, they have Philippians 4:13, like the hoodie you got me
Yeah.
here,
Yeah.
written on it, and they acknowledge that, and it's like now you're into the gospel, and it's like, okay, so this wasn't about me just sculpting cool things and making an income, and that's it. No,
Right.
actually, that wasn't it at all. So,
Well, and
you
look
know,
where it got you. So you've gone through multiple haunted houses. You've gone through multiple businesses. Okay. But now it's got you to a place where Dan's a pretty well known guy in Colorado when it comes to haunts and people and stuff like that. But you've also got yourself to where you're working with younger people now
yeah,
and helping them through issues that they've come up. And, you've talked to us about that before. Do you feel like that everything you've done has been kind of the lead up where that's the ultimate purpose? Or do you think that there's like still more coming for you with
I think another great question. That's good. I think
that?
I'm trying to figure out how to
No,
phrase.
just
I
Rex is
think
funny. He always calls us cousin because we got the same last name.
oh, nice.
What's up, Rex?
I think there's just been a
Okay.
break in daylight with it. Um, what I mean by that is like when you and I started our home hunt, it was in 2000. It's for us, and then the family came in, okay, and it was fun. It's this and that, and then we do the pro hunt. Oh, it's still kind of for us. The family's helping. We're meeting new people. We're trying to do it for financial and gain and a business gain, and then you're meeting more people. Well, that kind of fails, and then I've had that happen many times over, more than you even.
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, in the last few years, working at the place I do now at Terra in the Corn in Erie, more and more God's taken me out of it in my own mind and my desires to help me. It's like I've dropped even the artistic side of it totally, working out there where I'm there for people and I'm working with people.
Hmm.
And it's like just coming into that has been like the most life changing thing for me. And I hopefully I can help someone else there. Which I think I have. But and also even on top of that, it's like some of the guys I work with that I've known for years, I haven't had it a lot in my life, especially in that industry, where people actually trust me and
Yeah.
actually where they're not having me out there to use me. These guys aren't using me.
Right.
They're wanting me to be me. They're wanting me to say what I think I should say and do what I should do to help people out there. And it's like, man, so originally getting into it, I think my purpose is to, oh, I can do a business and run a professional haunted house, and that's that. It's all about me. Now it's like, who can I help out here? It's the polar opposite.
Right. Right.
So it can take many years. And the other thing is, the other part of our purpose is hardship and suffering to get you to those points.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Yep. Skydraw Walker, what's up, man? Good to see you. No, you're good, man. Check out the replay. Uncle Dave's movie and Twitch. Oh, what's up, man? Good to see you. Good to see you. So yeah, I got a few people rolling in. So
yeah, hello,
thanks for
everyone. Thank you for the
checking
time.
it out, guys. So we're talking about purpose. We're talking about all kinds of purpose, whether it be career oriented, family oriented, God oriented, all that sort of thing. So if you've come in late, it's all good.
All good. Yeah, thanks for coming in at all. That's
It's funny you're on my calendar. I don't. What does that mean? Whose calendar? did,
well,
did you
I,
put did you
I
put
think,
yakking about nothing on your calendar? It's like, oh, it's 8:30. I better.
hey, take the
Hey, I'll
compliment.
take
That's
it,
that's a
man.
nice thing.
I'll
Thank you.
take it. So yeah, no, I totally agree with you on that, and I think that's it. But like, I still to a point have a problem totally getting. I think I look at it in a bigger light where there's all these little parts of purpose, but there's also one like big ultimate purpose, And then like if you haven't figured that out and you're talking to someone who does, you feel really stupid sometimes. You're like, oh well, this guy figured it out. How come I haven't? But I will say,
I do have an
going
answer for you if you want, but go ahead.
okay. I think the ultimate purpose for us, if you're Christian and you believe in Jesus Christ and you believe in God and everything, the ultimate purpose is to follow Jesus. The ultimate purpose is to do that, to make disciples, to talk to as many people as you can about the gospel and talk to about many people as you can about Jesus, and also to get to heaven. Heaven is your end goal. It's the end game. So that should be your purpose as well. Now, do we screw that up like every day? Yeah, we screw that up every day, but thankfully we're saved, so we can restart the next day. But when it comes to I think the what I'm getting at is we do such a big thing when it comes to comparison. You know, like I used to do that a lot when I was older. Like I didn't have my first kid till I was 35. I knew a lot of people who had them when they were like in their 20s. You know, I didn't get married. I got remarried when I was 31. I knew a lot of people who got married when they're in their early 20s. They're divorced now, by the way. So it's
Go
like,
figure.
but it's like, do you do you ever find yourself doing that where you compare, people that either family members or friends with what they've done? You'd be like, oh man, I'm falling behind. I'm dragging behind. I'm not fulfilling everything that God has for me for one reason or another.
Well, all the time, 100%, because um, that's the world talking. That's not God talking. Because even when I'm making props and stuff at a vending out at the show in St. Louis at Transworld, there hasn't been a year in the last 10 years where I haven't thought a little envy of this vendor, that vendor, because they have a booth up close towards the door, or if they have a product that I don't personally think is as good as mine, why is he making more money than? And just these stupid thoughts.
Right.
Even something
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
or but you mentioned getting married. I mean, I'm going to be 41 in a couple of weeks. So I'm not married. I don't have a child, and I still actively will avoid doing certain things because I don't want to be a fifth wheel or a seventh wheel or a ninth wheel, meaning going hanging out with people and being the only one that's single,
Right.
because that bugs me. And so, I mean, it's all over the place. It can be anywhere. But what has to come in then is realize not our time, God's time, because there's two times we're talking about what society says, their
Mhm.
time. Oh, well, you must do this, you must do that,
Yep.
which is just collective society coming up with these ideas and rules over the past however many hundreds or thousands of years. And then what God says, which is typically the polar opposite. And, that's where you need that general correction from the Lord Himself, the conviction from the Holy Spirit of saying, well, again, it falls back to what I said earlier. If this guy's married at 25 and he has a wonderful wife and he has 3 kids and all this and that, and he's been married for 15 years, but I'm sitting here and I'm not married and
Yep.
I don't have kids and stuff. His purpose is not my purpose.
Right.
See,
Right.
that comparison is trying to blur the lines of purpose too, where his purpose was to get married at 25 and to have those kids at whatever age he did. Mine has not been. And sometimes our delays or our lack of effort or our own foolishness or mistakes we make can wreak some havoc on these things. Free will, like I said earlier. So that comparison game and the envy game are big trouble.
Well,
Big,
it's
big
what I
trouble.
like to call false purpose, where
Yes.
we talked about this before, you have your own idea what purpose is, and you're not listening to anything else or anybody else, and you just kind of go your own way. That's when you get yourself in trouble. Now,
Well,
I've
yeah,
done that
because
many times, and you've done that. And
yeah, exactly. And there's a false idea out there that we can create our own purpose. That's just completely untrue.
right, right.
We don't really create anything. Like
Well, we're given. It's like you said before. We're given the spot where you come to a point, and you got the fork in the road. You can go this way. You can go that way. And that's God saying, okay, well, you have free will. You make the decision which way you're going to go. Doesn't mean that you go this way, it ends up bad. That's the dead end. You
right,
will run into another fork in the road and another
right,
fork in the road. And it's not like,
right,
I mean, unless you like kill yourself, you don't want to do that, obviously.
right.
But I'm saying, you get what I'm saying. It's like,
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, you're not
you
just,
know,
oh, I made a mistake, so I'm done for it. Not at all.
when I
Not
was when I was 31 and I got divorced and I didn't have any kids, I never for one second thought that, okay, that's it, I'm done. It's not
that's
going to
good.
happen. I actively pursued even harder to find my now wife and have kids, because I always felt my purpose in life, number one, was to be a dad. I always felt that was my number one purpose in life, was to do that. And I still think that. I still think my number one purpose is to be a dad because it's just something, you know, our dad and our mom raised us so well that I saw what it was like, and I just always wanted to be a dad. I always thought I'd be good at it. I have to ask my kids if I'm good at it. I don't know if I'm good at it, but you
I'm
know,
sure you're
but
fine.
I always felt very strongly that that was a purpose. Now, when it comes to other things, you know, I work for an insurance company in IT. I never once in my life thought that that was a purpose.
It
But
wasn't even
that
on the
just
radar. Yeah.
no, it was never on the radar. I always wanted to, you know, when I was little, I wanted to be a baseball player. I
Yeah.
wanted to be a baseball player, and that was not in the cards. That was just not in the cards. And you know, there was Dan. Dan wanted to do a million things. He tried every sport under the sun. He tried art classes. You play instruments. You didn't think you'd be working where you're working now, did you?
No, man. My ideal thing would have been some sort of art form, to your point, but making movies would have been my thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But now, yeah, to your point, I work from home and I test software for my company, who is software that a bunch of trucking outfits use to book and ship and track freight.
Mhm.
So I mean,
Yeah. I mean, who
again,
would have thought
knowing
that?
that
Right.
it's not that I didn't want to do it; it's that I didn't know that existed.
Well,
Like,
yeah.
especially in high school, and they're saying, "Oh, well, what do you want to be when you grow up?" Or,
Well, we thought for
you
so
know,
long that the haunt was the end game. We thought when we
correct.
did our first haunt that that was it because we you know we've talked about this before where we had some people tell us we were good at it and they weren't wrong. We were good at it, but you know we used to ask ourselves we would talk about it. We still do. Why did that not work? Well, because it wasn't the purpose. It wasn't the you know to own our own haunt and do it the way that we thought at that time was not it at all. I mean,
Right.
for me, I'm completely out of it at all. Dan just addressed what he does with it and he still goes with it. So it's definitely more in the cards for Dan than it was for me. But it's like you just don't know. And if you're in a bad spot, God's usually gonna try to remove that. And if you're not gonna listen, I mean, he slammed the door shut in our faces with that.
Well, yeah. Well, I think with me at least, I was rerouted. It's like, yeah,
Rewrite,
you
right?
can
Yeah,
stay here, but you're doing it for all the wrong reasons,
yeah,
and um, because oftentimes the Holy Spirit, like, you feel like, and Mom talks about this, like, you'll feel like it's almost like this nagging in a way, not really a nagging, but like this persistent, like, drive. I mean, and it's not a bad thing. It's not, this or that, but it's just like sometimes you can just feel that pull, and God's pulling you somewhere, and that's where the obedience comes in, and then to change your mind, to actually like repent of like your original intent with getting into something, whether it's a haunted house or a whatever, uh, to change your mind and say, "Oh, I'm going to do it for the reason you want me to, God, not for the reason that I thought." And man, the reasons again were polar opposites, and the reason now is for other people. It has nothing to do with me, other than God working through me. Like,
mhm.
that's so rewarding, and I know that's my purpose or part of my purpose. Um, our purpose is found in the obedience to God, because anything we do for God that's obedient to Him is never bad, and that is always part of your purpose. Always, your obedience to God is always part of your purpose. Um, so,
So, do you have an example or an instance where God has put something in front of you that you would deem purpose that you haven't done and you still haven't done? Do you have an example of something like that?
uh, and there's probably things. I think a lot of those would be my own shortcomings, just like, uh, you know, whether it's my attitude or uh, even laziness in certain areas, like going to church or looking for a girl, or, that's the other thing. Was like, God's got to work through things with our own hearts sometimes before He gives us what we're asking for. He's
Yep.
got to prep you for it. He's got to get you in the right mindset. Because if, look, for example, if I had met a girl at, say, the age of 26, I know exactly how I was when I was 26. I was not marriage material or nowhere near marriage material.
Right.
And that's not a rag on myself. That's just my priorities were completely different. My understanding of things were totally different than they are now. My perspective was non-existent.
Right.
I was immature. There was a whole slew of things. It's not to say I was all bad, but compared to now, it's like, boy, I know I can be a good husband now in like a million different ways. But back then, it's like, whoa, not at all.
Right.
So it's like those. To your answer, your question, I guess, like, is those heart issues that may remain. You know, getting obedient with God and doing what He wants you to do. Uh, but as far as like just like worldly things, like, oh, was maybe this job or that your purpose, or to live there your purpose, or do this? It's like, no, I firmly believe God has people exactly where He wants them,
Yeah.
whether they're obedient or not. And a lot of that's a byproduct of reaping what we sow. But it doesn't
Yeah.
mean He's abandoned us. It means because we're always a work in progress till our last breath. But
Yeah.
He's working that out, and so, you can nitpick everything. Oh, I screwed this up. I screwed that up. I should have done this. I missed my purpose on this. It's like most of the time that's actually not true. Like even the screw ups are part of your purpose. Like
True.
that's the beauty of it. God
True.
corrects course. He promises to make good out of all the bad. So it's like
Yeah.
you can't screw up enough to where God's like, oh, I'm done.
Yeah.
So
Dave says, my purpose to share the world with my toy movie collection, preach the gospel. There you go, man.
that's
There you go.
perfect. And
Mix
using that.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. Mix of your content with different types of videos. Others say ones every single time you turn around. Yeah, no, I'm with you. A lot of people seem to not like that, but I'm glad that you're sticking to it, man, because that's a good
Yeah,
thing.
that's awesome.
So
Very, very good.
the reason I asked you that earlier is because I was kind of confronted with a little bit of something like that at church the other day. So I'll let you guys know right now, I am not the kind of person that like goes up to people and just starts talking. I've had a Okay, I'm gonna you can get your little violin real quick if you want, Dan. You can go ahead and get it because I'm gonna do one of those things.
Single tear
He's
running
got a
down.
little tear. So I've had a lot of friendships go bad, right? Okay, and a lot of people, we know what's happened with the YouTube thing, so that's still fresh in my mind and everything else. But it goes way back. It goes back to when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, when I was a young adult. Had a lot of people just kind of say, "Screw you," that kind of thing. So I'm not the best person at making friends. I'm really not. I'm not at all. I'm not good at it at all. It's kind of like, the pimply teenager who's wanting to talk to the really pretty blonde cheerleader. Like you just can't do it. It's kind of like that with me
Yeah,
and
the
a lot of
squeaky
people.
voice.
Right, right. So, but I'm sitting there in church the other day, and our pastor's talking, and he's talking about something just like this. So it's like, whenever you go to church and you got something on your heart, it's funny how God always finds a way to work it into the sermon to talk to you about it. So that's kind of what happened. Our pastor, he's like, well, we need small group leaders. We need men small group leaders. And all of a sudden, I just felt like this thing come over and be like, you need to do it. And I'm like, no, we're not
Yeah.
doing that. We're not doing that at all. So I kind of thought about it, and I was on a major pity party yesterday with kind of the whole thing because I'll be honest, the YouTube things that have happened and gone on, man, really, it's stupid, but have really kind of opened up old wounds with stuff like that. So it's like I don't really want to put myself out there to be disappointed by people because I kind of have a mentality sometimes where I expect somebody to disappoint me because it's happened so many times. So that's unfortunately part of my psyche with stuff like this. And I think my greatest fear is, if I do this, what if no one shows up? How am I going to react to that? It's going to go bad for me. It's going to be a bad situation. I'm never going to want to do it again. So, the point is, it's like I'm trying to resist what God's saying, but it's not working out too well because, I think He sees me as someone who can lead, which I guess, I guess is the case. But I find it interesting how you have something that you're thinking about or going through, and then all of a sudden God kind of throws a very unexpected twist, and wants you to confront it instead of like let it go and just like, you know, to me, leave me alone. I don't want to do this, that sort of thing. So, like, how would you deal with that?
I have dealt with it, and what I would say is, you know, for your sake, the reason God's calling you to do that is because, not saying all your life experiences that you weren't mistreated, but what's the one common denominator through all your hardships in your life?
Me.
That's you. And so you're, no offense, but you're quick to give up. You're quick to just drop people if things don't go your way, or you assume the worst, which we all do. But God's calling you to change. He's calling you to change. He's not calling you to worry about if everyone around you is changing.
All right.
And he's not calling you to say, what if? He's calling you to just say yes. And so he wants to change something in you to do that. And in the meantime, while that's happening, he'll work through you to help other people. And so you need to let your guard down and drop your shield generators, at a Star Wars reference, if you will, and give people a chance. And you give them 2 chances, and you give them 10 chances. And you understand that not every situation or everything that everyone says or does will be perfect or meet our own qualifications, because we all do it where we are say, well, I wouldn't do that. We want others to do what we would do. That is the biggest snare of the devil there is. You know, everyone's an individual. So I think you definitely should be doing what you're talking about. You need to do that. And that's what I came to realize, because I was the same way, where it's like, I used to be so bad about worrying about everyone else and getting mad and holding grudges and um, why isn't this person doing that, or why isn't that person, and being short tempered and just being angry. And well, this person's not calling me, so I give up. It's like, why I shouldn't have to do this, I shouldn't have to do that. God changed my heart on that one, where it's like, no, I told you what's right to do and what's wrong to do. As long as you do what's right, I'll take care of everything else. You don't worry about what this person's doing, that person's doing, what they're going to respond, what they're going to say, what they're going to do. You worry about what you're supposed to do. And if you're obedient to God and everything, it takes care of everything else. Just like with YouTube, if you're doing what's right and you got people giving you dislikes or saying nasty comments, oh well. Oh well. You do what you know is right, what God says it's right. And that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned. That's where he had to change me. And that's your purpose. Again, that goes back to obedience. We're all, we're always going to be afraid of something. We're always going to be timid or go back to the past, because we've all had, like you just said, really deep, hard, hurtful things go on. But that's where forgiveness, grace, and a soft heart and a willingness to change comes in. And use those things to your advantage. Use them to say, that person treated me that way and that sucked. So now I'm going to do the opposite with all the people I know and treat them the opposite. And I'm going to do what God wants me to do. So long answer, but it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
part of the purpose, is God changing your heart on something. So he wants to use you. You should actually be looking at this as a massive compliment from God himself, because it's like, oh, me? Yeah, you. Because you can
Yeah.
do it. You just have to have that
Well,
faith, be
and what
willing
you'll
to.
do, when you don't want to do it, you'll find every reason not to. You'll make every
Uh-huh.
excuse up not to do it, and you'll be
Of
like,
course.
well, blah blah blah, this, I can't. Oh, it's Wednesday. Wednesday's polling night. I can't do that.
Yeah,
Something
yeah, it's
something
fun.
stupid like that. It's like, it just
Well, be real with
yeah,
yourself. And that's what I've had to do, is look at your past and say, okay, all these people did wrong things, but what did I do wrong? It's okay to do that. It's okay to say, you know what, I'm going to stop doing that now. I'm not going to be afraid of this. I've never done this before, and that's probably why I should be doing it,
right.
because the hardest things in life to do are the things that God is typically calling you to do.
Yeah.
I mean, how did
Well,
Noah probably, what were his first thoughts when God's like, hey, you need to build this big boat, man?
right, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like,
It's got to be 450 feet
yeah, like,
by 40 feet high by 200 feet wide.
yeah,
It
because you're going to see,
yeah.
it's not going to take long if you're leading a group at church, where you're going to see good fruits of it very quickly, not only in your own heart, for with other people. It'll happen quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you get the feeling of, And you're right. It's like in that regard, you get the feeling that you're missing out. You're just kind of stuck in this rut. You're having a pity party. I'll call it what it is. And you're
We've all
like,
done.
but I think, and it's easier to blame everybody else. It's easier to
Uh-huh.
say, oh well, no one's coming to me. No one's doing this, no one's doing that. And it's like, well, you got to take a step back and look at it, and be like, well, what are you doing? But what you said was perfect. It's like, yeah, I give up easy. If you've
Right,
watched
and
this
I
channel for
only
any
say that
period of
to
time,
help you.
I've given up on this channel like 5 times. So
Well, yeah, yeah, and that's the other thing is like what I just told you was part of my purpose is to speak truth, and it's
right,
not to hurt a person because believe me, any shortcomings you have, I have the same amount or twice as many. Yeah, I
well,
would, you know,
exactly.
but
And
we
that's what
have
we always
to.
say on this thing is we never talk about stuff that we haven't gone through ourselves.
Right, right,
Mhm.
right. Because any pity party you've had or anything you've held against a person, I've done the same times 10 probably. It's not, oh, Phil just is so horrible. No, it's we all have to be honest with each other and with our own shortcomings. And that is also, again, part of the purpose because truth, obedience to God, it's all the same thing. It's all part of it. Um, and you can't get to the next step if you're not doing this step.
Right.
So,
Well, and what you'll do is you'll get yourself in idle. You'll get yourself if you're not going to confront things and you're not going to do things and you're just going to kind of sit and just let the world go by, you'll be an idle. I feel like I've been an idle for a little while now myself because it's like I fear kind of runs the thing. I'm too afraid to go up to somebody else or do this. And, you know, the unfortunate thing is when you start thinking certain things about yourself and then you see those things like in public or you see those things like on a video, it makes it harder. I'm sure a lot of people have gone through that too, where they have their own self doubts, but then they actually see it that people are actually saying those things. Like that's a hard pill to swallow. It's hard to see stuff like that, and you're like, geez. I mean, I always thought it was, you always thought it was just you, and then there's another distraction to fulfill you or to keep you from fulfilling your purpose, and it's like it can be. I mean, it's like driving through cones. It can be very difficult to um, weave through all that stuff. And you don't. Sometimes you hit some cones, you don't know where you're going. So
yeah.
yeah,
Well, and there that's where the other thing too is like if we do make mistakes with people, we have to have a willingness and an open heart to not only acknowledge it, but we have to apologize and we have to own
mhm.
our crap. You know, yeah, we've all been burned, but you and I and everyone else, we've burned as well.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. There's no one out there who hasn't done that. Yeah.
well, exactly. And so just being honest, but to your point, like looking back, for example, like with Facebook memories, for example, like man, I look at that every day and some of my posts, most of my posts from like 2010, 2011,
Oh, you
2012.
used to go off like
Oh
crazy.
my gosh. Like I cringe.
Just a
I'm the only one that
maniac.
sees it. It's this bad where I'm the only one that sees it and I'm still embarrassed. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
only me and God can see that because it's a memory on there. It's not to the public, but I'm embarrassed by it because it's like, oh my gosh, that's terrible. Like you're
yeah,
the
yeah.
attitude and the lack of perspective and just the like you said there's not one world's smallest violin but two because I was an extra big victim at the time.
Right.
um, so that happens with everybody but the key is willingness to acknowledge it and having a willingness to own it and then a willingness to change it because that's again part of the purpose you know so
Yeah.
god is so deep with things he can
Oh,
do.
totally,
It's
totally.
unfathomable in our own
Yep.
minds.
Yep.
But a lot of people can think it's weakness to own a mistake or apologize or say, oh, I need to.
No, definitely. Yeah, definitely
No,
not. I
it's a
mean,
strength. It's
that's part of
or
your
as Apostle
purpose
Paul.
too, is to be forgiving. God
Yes.
calls us to forgive quicker
Yes.
than we had a problem with that person.
Yeah.
And
Well, Apostle Paul says you find strength in weakness.
mm,
And so, but yeah, the true weakness is holding grudges, is not acknowledging failures, thinking you don't need to change, not trying to do what God wants you to do that you don't like personally.
Right.
True
Right.
weakness is selfishness.
Yeah.
At the
Yeah.
end of the day, pride.
Well, and I think that a lot of people they don't mean to make it a selfishness thing, but that's kind of where it goes. I don't think it really starts out that way, but if you're saying I don't want that, that's the epitome of selfishness, right?
Well, yeah,
So,
because
you
you know,
know,
yeah, our lives aren't for us either, though.
right, right, right,
Like, God tells you to, you don't love your life. If you love your life, you'll lose it. We're supposed to love Him, and then that means our desires are gone. And this life right now is Him working through us, and we're doing His will, not our own. That's what that means. A lot of people, including myself, hate that idea. Um, but our purpose cannot be found in selfishness, typically.
right, right.
So
Exactly.
that's,
I mean, like what I said before, the main purpose is to go and tell other make is to go and make other disciples. That's completely not selfish because what you're doing is you're caring about that person so much that you're trying to tell them that's going to save their lives one day and keep them out of a place they don't want to go. That's the absolute epitome of non-selfishness.
correct.
The selfish thing to do would to not be telling those people about that.
Because
To
you're
to
scared or you don't want to
right,
bother someone
right,
or you're afraid of their reaction. That's all
right.
self.
Yeah, you're worried about how it's going to affect you
Yeah.
or
What
your
about
family
them if
or
you
whatever.
don't tell them?
Right. Well, then it's going to affect you. It's going to affect you and you only. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So
Uh,
yeah.
Uncle Dave says doesn't matter if you mess up. God loves you. I love you and wants you to give it. But thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that
Amen.
a lot. No one is perfect. Only God is. Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yep. Amen. And on top of that, like with what Uncle Dave said, like no one is good except God. Like
Right.
the goodness we have is His goodness that He's giving to us. He's making us good. We're not just born good, like.
It's those people who say I'm a good person. Yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Well,
you're not.
what's funny
You've
about
done
that
shit.
whole
We all know you have.
well, what's funny about that thing is like you know the idea of what is good. If you can ask 10 people, you can get 10 different answers, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
what makes you a good person? You get 10 different answers. Like, there is no worldly good. That's this society and people don't decide that. God
Right.
decides that.
I mean, there's
So,
people out there that think taking down and killing an entire civilization of people who like in Africa is good because we're freeing them from whatever. That
right.
there is a good is a very loose term. The
Good is
only
an
one that
act that is selfless and doesn't harm others and
right,
is
right.
obedience to God. That's good.
You don't
And
get
you're
any
doing it
benefit. Yeah,
for
you
God.
don't get any benefit for it. In no way
Right.
does it make you better off. Yep,
Right.
yep.
Right.
What would you say if say somebody younger was coming up to you and maybe like 10, let's say like 10 to 15, like one of those, what do they call them, tweens? My daughter's almost a tween, so
Yes.
I'm learning this word. And they asked you, how do I find my person? How would you explain to someone younger on what they need to look for when it comes to kind of finding their purpose? Like what would be, I'm kind of put you on the spot here, but what would
I
be
don't
like an
mind that.
example? What would be like an example that you would give them to help them find their purpose? Because that's a weird time. My daughter's kind of going through that where she's kind of phasing out from being a kid and starting to get into teenage and then to adult years. And it's like you can kind of see that it's changing.
Yeah. Well, I think at that age they're a lot smarter than we understand. So
Definitely.
I don't think you have to talk to a person that age like they're that age or even younger. I think you can actually talk to them more like an adult. Um, and we can bring and expand it more than what I'm going to say, but it's 4 words: find God, find purpose.
Right. Right. No,
I mean,
you're
that's
absolutely right.
too simple. No, it is that simple. And uh, because again, God will guide your steps. He'll lead you. Um, to Uncle Dave's point, even if we screw up, because we're not
Mhm.
perfect, only God is, He'll
Mhm.
still lead. He'll still lead you through the screw ups. So no God, no purpose. KNOW, no, that is. Find
Well, it
God,
goes the
find
other way
purpose.
too. It goes the other way too.
Well, no
And
God, no
oh,
purpose. Yeah,
exactly. Yep.
and no
Yep.
God and no purpose. Very good.
Yep.
So because without God's involvement in it, if we're trying to create our own purpose and appease people and what they think purpose is and society and all this, you are going to be like a ping pong ball. You're going to be all over the map, and you're never going to be fulfilled, and you're never going to think that you've actually truly accomplished anything, because the world cannot fulfill. It cannot fulfill the starving, empty soul and the hardened heart. Only Christ can do that. And so it's so much easier to say God's the director of this film being our life. He's the writer and the director, and you just do what he says.
Mhm.
I mean, that's too simple or simplified. Not really.
It
I'm not
doesn't
saying
need,
it's
yeah.
easy to do, but it's true. And even for a person that age, 12 years old, 13, keep Christ at the center. He's not first in your life. He's the center of your life. Build your house on a solid foundation. The rock is Christ, and don't build your house on yourself.
Hmm.
You want to find your purpose, find God, and then get your own self, your own butt out of the way.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's my answer, honestly, because I've actually 2 years in a row I've had working at the haunted house. I had a couple because I'm a zone lead, like I've said, and I can lead anywhere from 20, 25, 30 actors a night. And 2 years in a row, I've had some wise guy actor where in our meeting before, and I say, if you have any questions, anything at all, just ask me, let me know. Well, okay, Dad, what's the meaning of life? I turn to him, I say, well, that's actually easy. It's the two greatest commandments. It's love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself, because that is the meaning of life, and that is your purpose. It's the same answer for both. Again, it's easy, but society has skewed things. So.
Well, yeah, because neither one is a selfish act.
Yeah,
They're both selfless
where am
act.
I
That's
on this?
why.
Where am I on this? Yeah.
Right. I have to God, then other people, then me. Oh, screw that. I'm not doing
Well,
that.
love my neighbor as myself. You mean I can't love myself more? No, you can't. I can't think of myself first.
But what if you're like Jerry Seinfeld and you hate yourself? Then what do you do?
Well, then you got a whole other world of
You've
problems,
got
don't
another
you?
problem. Right. Right. No, that's good. I mean, it's kids are like sponges, man. They really and that's one worry that I have with my kids is, my outlook with other people is not the best, and I try not to let that come through with my kids, but I know they probably see the frustration somehow. And it's like, whoa, you got to pull that back. I'll sit there and bitch about it in private, but I can't do it, you know, like around them. So, but you know, kids will surprise you. You think that when you have kids, oh, they're going to be just like me. Man, guess again. Not at
They
all.
have some similarities, but they're still their own person. They're still
Right,
that
right. Like
individual.
any weird inhibition you may have. Like I was a really quiet kid. If my dad was on, he'd tell you right now, I said maybe 5 words when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And my kids, they don't shut up. That's all they do is freaking talk. Like it drives me nuts because they talk so much. And it's like,
Yeah.
where did they get this from? So the point is, it's like just because you have a purpose in what you think it's going to go like doesn't mean that that's how it's going to go. It can go completely different. And I think the hard part is adjusting that to it. Me as a quiet person, it's hard for me to understand why these two talk so damn much and are so loud and everything else. And it's like that's the part that can be difficult. And trying to get where they're going and guide them in a way that I might not understand can be challenging as well. But I guess that's just where you look to God for guidance,
Yeah.
right? Yep.
That's literally it.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So where's an area of purpose that you think you haven't got to yet?
I mean, I can have speculation. I'm sure there's plenty of people God wants me to still meet or work with, or even people I know now that He still wants me to have more time with, to that He can work through me to hopefully help bring them closer to Him, or lift them up in some capacity, or help them in some capacity. That's a huge one. But I would like to think that marriage and maybe hopefully a child, but that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if that was to happen, I would never be a perfect husband, but I think I could be a good one, because God again has given us the template for all these things. So it's like if I'm following His template, it'll probably work out, you know.
Right.
And the same with being a father, you know. But I think just the ongoing one to just be like my getting my heart in the right places on, you know, as many things as possible. You know, I want to have a better attitude. I want to have, um, you know, more joy. I want to have more peace. I want to help more people. I want to be even more outgoing. I used to be so quiet, like you were. High school, I talked to like three people,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and now it's like I can't wait to be around people, and I can't wait to lead people and help people and teach people like as many as possible. It's funny how what God can do in a 20-year span, but it's been that's the other thing is we want things on our own time. It's like, but it's a slow burn oftentimes where God's working on you for 20, 22, 30 years, and even beyond that to get you to start fulfilling more of the purpose He has for you, whatever it may be, in comparison to what you did when you were, say, 16 or 18 or whatever, where you're a totally different person, which is, again, part of the purpose to get
Yeah.
to another part of the purpose to fulfill another part of the purpose.
Right. It's just this puzzle, the steps. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, I always tell people it's like with God there are no small things, and I truly believe that. Like for example, people think, oh, it's just a small thing if I just tell someone, hey, you did a good job. You may think that's a small thing. It's easy to say that. It's easy to do, right? Like we can all do that. It takes us 4 seconds. But maybe the person you're saying that to, it's like maybe they've literally are 30 years old and maybe they've literally never heard that in their life. I've
Yeah.
literally come across this quite a
Yeah.
bit. And it doesn't make their moment. It doesn't make their day. It literally makes like their life.
Yeah.
Like, I know that sounds silly, but it's not. And that literally, like the Bible talks about it, how a cheerful word can build somebody up, lift somebody up, and that could change the whole trajectory of their life.
Yeah.
And it's like if you think about that, like you saying that God put it on your heart to say that, He prompted you to say that. Yeah, you had the choice, but you were obedient and you said it, and He used that to reignite this person's purpose and get them on that path He wanted them on this whole time.
Right.
Like it's so deep. And that's why there are no real small things. There's no small obedience to God. No, it's all big because it's all part of His collective plan and His collective purpose. It's it's literally moving the heavenly realms. Like it's that huge. Like you know, Mel Gibson said it best on Joe Rogan when he was talking about making the sequel to Passion of the Christ, where you know why is it this the question he had, the great question, why is it that good and evil wants to fight over us as these flawed, sinful, broken, evil, selfish people? Why are they so compelled on fighting over us? That's like you think we don't want anything to do with these losers. They're
Right.
terrible. They're all
Right.
disgusting. They're
Yeah.
killing each other. They're stealing. They're horrible. But no, what's so important about us? Obviously, there's something very important about us. So what we do matters. What we say matters. You know, it's very deep.
Yeah. No, it is. It is very deep, and it's like you don't think of it in that way. You know, you get fixated on one thing, one little thing. That's
Ourselves,
usually right.
usually.
Ourselves. Ourselves.
Not
Yeah.
always.
I mean, yeah. You took the words right out of my mouth. Ourselves. You know, I'm not doing this because of what Bob downtown San Francisco Center. Blah blah blah. And it's
Right.
like, oh, geez. You know,
If
it's
only I
like
hadn't done that 20 years ago, things would be different.
right.
Or maybe it
Right.
was supposed to be that way.
Oh yeah,
Well,
well,
God, I mean,
that,
God
that's the
warns
thing
about
too.
looking at
Everything's a learning lesson. You know, these are
ideally.
not only purposes but lessons. Lessons is a big important thing about it. It's like the reason you're going through fires at times is because it's a lesson. You know, God's
Yes.
trying to show you something that you either are going to encounter or you have encountered and you're not doing a good job. So he's trying to show you how to do a better job with it by having to go through it again. You know, they always say it's like if your life's perfect, you're not going through anything, you're in trouble. If you're not going through something, you're not being taught a lesson. I think, you know, God doesn't really give up on anybody, but maybe you've kind of given up on yourself and you're just being content. The last thing you want to be is content with yourself. You want to keep
Well,
going.
right, yeah, you don't want to ever be content with where your heart's at. You want to be content with a situation that you can't control.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah,
But no, I know what you mean. But never be content with like, oh, I there's no room for me to grow or learn or change or
right.
get better. That is narcissism to the fullest, and not don't have that willingness to listen
Yeah,
to God and the people
no,
God's
it's
put in your life, especially like.
blasphemous as well. So
But
yeah,
it's thinking you know everything. Like God, the Bible says, "Do not rely on what you think you know." Boy, yeah, I
yeah,
thought I was this and that, and this is going to go this way, and it's like, no, not even
yeah,
close,
yeah.
not remotely
No,
close.
you're
So,
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So, yep, yep. Um, is there anything like I'm just spitballing here? Is there anything that you haven't done that you wish you had done and you still kind of considered it? Do you feel like God's put anything on you? I mean, it can even be something as crazy as like a sport or like an activity or something where it's like, I've always kind of wanted to try that, but I never did. And, maybe it's my purpose to do it too, to have God work through me in another area. Or maybe it's just my purpose because it's a new activity and fun. You and I kind of did that a few years ago when we went and we played the floor hockey.
yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah,
we had played hockey, we had played roller hockey when we were kids, and I got wind of that, and I asked you if you wanted to play, and you weren't too keen on it to start,
right, right,
but then we did it, and it was fun,
yeah.
and
And
it
you
was
realize how bad a shape you were in really
right,
quick.
right,
About eight,
right,
eight
yeah.
seconds, you're winded.
So,
But
like have
that
to
was
run up
good
and
to
down the
do.
whole court. What the hell? Uh, uh, but
um,
is there anything like that?
I I mean, you can that question that you can drift off into la la land with like going to the whole regrets thing.
Yeah, you can. Yeah,
But it's hard to have regrets because God makes all good or all bad into good. He uses everything, so it's taken care of. Our biggest sins, our biggest screw ups, our biggest shortcomings are taken care of in more ways than one. Christ atoned for the sin as well. But if just from a personal standpoint, well, there's two things. One of the biggest things I think, and I know there's nothing I can do about it. Well, let me rephrase that. There is something I can do about it. Well, when I was younger, if I mistreated anybody, and I know full well if I mistreated someone, um, you know, that gets to you because out of nowhere you'll just think of stuff. Or like when I talk to my friend Jeff Craig, like because we've known each other since fourth grade, so he'll bring up people that maybe I forgot about, and then suddenly the floodgates open, or I remember, oh my gosh, I did this to them, or I said that to them, or so stuff like that where you just didn't treat people right. And what you can do about that is, well, you just ask God for forgiveness, although it's already forgiven if you're in Christ. But also, right now, you change it by how you treat people in your life right now.
right,
You don't
right.
replicate it. That's it. Like the Bible says, you don't repay evil for evil. You fight evil by doing good. So if I did evil in the past, how do I fight that? I do good now. I treat
Yeah,
people well now, and in the future. I don't look back and be like, oh, I can't do anything about a guy I was mean to in fourth grade, right?
right.
Uh,
So I'm
but
just gonna be mean to everybody now.
yeah, exactly. Bully everybody.
Right.
So, but yeah, just from like a personal, like maybe worldly standpoint, obviously, like I said, being married would be nice. But one thing I really wanted to do that I've never been able to do and had the opportunity was, um, you know, is like short film or making a film, which bugs me badly. Maybe that
Yeah.
sounds silly to people, but
No.
uh, that bugs me. And then some of my props, like I've never made like these life size props that I've wanted to make for so many years. Um, and again, do those things really affect other people? Not really. It's just selfish ideas or goals that don't really amount to much necessarily, or maybe they do. I don't know. Or maybe God says no; those just do not matter, and that's why they just haven't happened. And if
Yep.
that's the case, then that's fine.
Yep.
Um, but no, man, I'm pretty blessed. I don't really have a lot. I think most of it is just you can look back and say, oh, my attitude is bad and I felt sorry for myself and I had this and that. But God's changed most of those things for me. Not that it's still not a work in progress, but I've gotten so much better by the grace of God that it's like it's hard to even look back and worry about that because it's like, well, I'm doing better now, and I think it's only going to get better. So it's like, well, why dwell?
Well, and
So,
that's a good point because like when you say you need to forgive people or forgive everyone else, like forgiving yourself's like the first thing.
well, absolutely.
You know,
Well, if you don't, then you're kind of a hypocrite. Like,
well, exactly. If you can't
so,
forgive yourself, you can't forgive anybody else.
right,
You know, so
right.
I know I have a problem with that. I have a problem forgiving myself for, things I've done or way I've acted. I still kick myself for things that happened years ago. So
Well,
it's like,
you know what the ultimate relief to that is, honestly, um, the way that God can really take care of that for you. Obviously, like praying about it, but when the Bible says confess your sins one another, tell people your shortcomings and your mistakes, whether they're in the past or not. Just when you're honest and you get it all in the open, you're always gonna. That's always gonna help somebody else. Is the biggest thing. But man, it frees you up. It frees you up.
okay. Well, I'll go ahead and do one. I apologize to the people on Facebook that I put the Mahomes kissing the referee just to zing the Chiefs guy. So I,
Well, I
I
think
apologize.
I don't think you have to apologize for little jokes and memes. I mean, I was talking like the hardcore stuff, like
Well, that could have really hurt somebody's feelings, even though it's true. It could have really hurt somebody's
yeah, we
feelings.
all know that's going on. But I was thinking more like actual legitimate, serious issues.
Well, hey, some people that is a serious issue.
Well, you
There's
don't
some
pander
people,
to the
the
internet
chefs are the
crowd that
yeah,
only that's
yeah,
offended by literally everything. You can't.
right, and that's a good point because that's what makes it hard nowadays. It's like when you get offended by literally everything, even though someone's not even talking about you, it makes it hard. Like it's crazy.
You don't worry about it. You do what you know is right, and they're going to respond how they choose to respond, and oh well.
Yeah, yeah, which is
You
usually
know,
not the best.
no, and that's their problem.
Yeah, yeah,
No.
absolutely, absolutely. All right, man. Well, yeah, good show, good show. I don't think. I mean, did you have anything else you wanted to say about it?
Yeah, it's such a deep issue. You could go on and on. But that's the thing. Like I mentioned, I will just say this in closing. Like when I mentioned Proverbs 19:21 earlier, when it's like talking, no matter the plans we have and the shortcomings we have, that God's plan, His purpose prevails. Um, if you really think about that, what that means, it's like no matter what you do in this life, wrong or right, purpose or no purpose, mistake or not mistake, sin or no sin, if you're with Christ, that is His purpose, is for none of us to be away from Him for eternity. So if you're with Him, your purpose is it's there, like the eternal purpose. So any shortcomings in this life are so minuscule and so the blink of an eye and so unimportant in comparison to that eternal purpose.
Yeah,
That's something that, but we dwell on the worldly shortcomings and the worldly purpose, when in actuality we should dwell on the eternal purpose, which is far more important, because that eternal purpose needs to be the purpose also that's here on earth, that is doing God's will and being obedient to Him and loving your neighbor as yourself. So if all your idea of purpose is rooted in God, you are fine. Not going to
yeah,
be fine, you are fine.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
that's what I would say.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right. Well, good show. Like I said, thanks to everybody who was checking out. Geez, what am I doing to my computer? Oh, that was weird. But yeah, thanks to everybody, Mr. Boom Boom, Uncle Dave, uh, Sky Drill Walker, Millennium Workshop. Thanks for chiming in, guys. Appreciate
Yeah,
you checking
definitely.
it out. We'll be back next week with an all new topic. I don't know what that'll be, like every other week. I guess it's my turn to think of something, so I'll come up with something. I'll come up
It
with
always
something.
happens, man. You don't even worry about it.
Yeah, no. I texted Dan last night. I said, "What do you want to do?" And or he had an idea. So good job, man. Yeah, there you go. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week. Bye. Oh, jeez. Technology.